Hi folks, Forrest Day here. On Rolling Tape today we have Dave Willard from Azden Mics. He's going to give us tips for recording film narration. Now, let's roll tape.
This episode brought to you by Spoof Dance Film Festival. Make parody commercials and bring the funny.
Hi Dave.
Hi Forrest.
Thanks for joining us. Now, tell us a little bit about recording film narration.
Sure. Yeah. So I have a few points lined up today to go over. And my first point I wanted to make, obviously, before you get started recording anything, you got to choose your microphone. And just like anything, the human voice is, there are microphones that are suited best for the human voice, like there is for any instrument that you might be recording. So you can use pretty much any microphone and get the job done. But to really get that professional sound, you want to go with more often than not, something like a large diaphragm microphone. Those are the microphones you may have seen in, TV shows or movies where they're showing a recording studio, and it's usually that big microphone that's hanging upside down from like a spidery shock mount. And those are really the best for recording voice and vocals. The other part about that microphone that's important is that you want to choose the right kind of polar pattern. And there's a lot of different options out there. Mostly you want to choose something that's directional, or the technical terms for those are cardioid, supercardioid, hypercardioid, anything like that. Really means that the microphone is going to focus in on what's in front of it, your voice, and try to block out the rest of the room and the other noise around you. So that's what you really want. Something like you could also use like a shotgun microphone, which is more of the hyper or supercardioid type, and that's really going to focus in on. And that's a lot of people use those on, film sets and shooting on location and in sound studios and stuff like that. But they can work really well too as an up close microphone. Just to show you, here's a shotgun microphone that we have. And the other thing I will bring up too about microphones, if you go and research types of large diaphragm microphones, also that it should be a condenser. You can use, there's two different kinds of microphones, condenser and dynamic. Dynamics, you'll get decent sound, but you tend to need very good audio preamps to use a dynamic microphone. If you don't, they can tend to be a little bit noisy. Condensers are going to have a higher output, and generally you're going to have better results with lower end audio gear with that. And you're going to have to make a decision between a USB microphone and a traditional XLR microphone. There's a whole bunch of, now on the market, direct connect to your computer USB style microphones that do the job just fine. Some of the cheapy ones, not so well, but you can spend a decent amount of money on a USB microphone and get very good results. I would just say look for one that's got a volume or gain control on it, and maybe some other features like a polar pattern switching. Some of them allow you to change your polar pattern, even though you might be mostly using cardioid, and maybe a low cut filter or something like that.
Right. And what would someone use a voiceover in a film for? People like, are you talking documentary or trailers?
Yeah, well, all that kind of thing. So any kind of voiceover, whether you're doing like a radio commercial or just some kind of other audio content, or if it is for film. Whether it be a documentary, TV commercial, it doesn't really matter. The same principle applies. You want to get the microphones I was talking about before are going to be most suitable to recording voice.
Now, when we talk about the equipment, the correct equipment, your number 2 point, there's a difference between a USB mic, which can plug right into a computer. What about an XLR mic? What equipment do you need?
Right. You're going to want to get yourself an audio interface. That's going to be equipped with a preamp to basically amplify the microphone and then change the analog signal to digital. So that interface will connect via USB to your computer. You might be wondering, why do I need that if I can just get the USB? Well, some of the XLR microphones will be much higher quality. You'll get other uses out of them rather than just computer recording. So if you want to go with a traditional XLR mic, that's a good way to go. It's my preference to use an audio interface. You also get more controls generally on the audio interface than you do in the all-in-one USB mic. So that's a big thing. If you're going to go XLR, you need that audio interface. And some of the things that you might need, obviously, like a mic stand, something sturdy. You want to be able to get that microphone really close to your mouth, obviously, to get isolation from the room and the other noise. And also, you generally want to use a pop filter if you're going to be up really close on the microphone. Either a foam cover, but even better is that like nylon screen that sits right in front of the microphone diaphragm.
Right, right. So now let's talk about your number 3 point, which is recording space.
Mm-hmm.
How does all this equipment come into play with the recording space? And talk about the shape of the room and how they can affect your sound.
Yeah, well, yeah, the shape of the room can really affect the sound, but most of us are going to have to be confined to square, rectangular rooms. The way those reflect sound isn't actually the best, but what you really want to do is choose a room that's going to be relatively quiet. I'm in, for example, kind of very bad example of a room that you want to record in, ironically enough. I'm in an office here, very small room with bare walls, and there's a HVAC system going on above my head. So the microphone's no doubt picking some of that up, even though it is a directional microphone. I have one of our microphones that has an SMX30 picking up my voice right now. It's probably picking up a decent amount of reflection from the room too. So what you'll generally want to do is, if you can put some sound absorptive items on the wall, that can help you dampen the echo. You can go out and get like foam squares to put on the wall, or you can actually just hang blankets. That's another way to do it. And the more you can cover the bare spaces on the walls, the better, to kind of cut down on that echo, and that's really going to help you tremendously. There's another thing, ideally in recording studios, they put you in a very confined booth with foam everywhere, with isolation booth. Most of us can't really do that at home if you're going to be recording at home. So one of the things you can also get is it's a big semicircle of foam that goes behind the microphone. And what that does is it actually captures the sound of your voice before it really kind of scatters out into the rest of the space. So that without a proper isolation booth, that can go a long way too.
Correct. And the part of sound control is not just absorption, but breaking up that sound. Hanging pictures on the wall actually helps.
Oh yeah, that's called diffusion. So rather than just absorbing the sound, you generally don't want a completely dead room, but for recording vocals, that is generally fine. But if you put pictures on the wall, there's a bookcase behind you or something, that's going to scatter the sound in different ways, and that's going to generally sound a lot better for the reverb that does happen.
So now you're recording. There's lots of technical things to it, like bit rates and everything. Can you talk briefly on bit rates?
Sure, yeah. When you set up your recording, you're going to want to know at least a little bit about bit rates. And that is to say that generally, there's two things to be aware of: sample rate and then bit depth. Just to give you a benchmark, CD quality audio is 44.1 kilohertz sampling rate. And the bit depth is 16 bits. So that's what CD is. Generally in video, they use as a standard 48 kilohertz as a sampling rate. So it can potentially be a problem if you record at 44.1 and then try to import the digital file into your project and it's trying to read it at 48. I think stuff like Adobe Premiere probably have conversions that take the file so that those mistakes don't really happen. If you hear a 44.1 file read at 48, it'll sound, I think it's either slower or faster. So you either sound like you're half asleep or you drank 5 cups of coffee. But you really don't want that conversion to take place either. You'd rather just record at 48 and have that stay at that sampling rate. And in general, I'd say record at 24-bit if you can. But once you've got your sound recorded, you might have to do some massaging after the fact, a little post-production work on the audio. And to really get that pro sound, what we're all used to hearing on TV and radio and film, so you're going to need probably a little bit of EQ and definitely some compression to really beef up your sound and make it sound professional.
And how do you do that?
Well, if you're using some kind of audio recording software and editing software, which I do recommend using some kind of separate software meant just for audio and not just recording it into, God forbid, just iMovie or something like that. But something, and there's a lot of stuff out there that's even free that's available. As much as I loathe using it, Audacity is an option out there. I'm a Pro Tools guy myself. Most people won't be able to go that route, but I think probably most people in the video space are familiar with Adobe Audition. That's a fine program to use as well.
Well, what's the difference? You're talking software based.
Yeah.
What if somebody wants to invest in a studio and actually buy the hardware? What do you recommend? Is that going to give you a better sound than the software, or is it going to give you a worse sound than the software?
Well, that's kind of up to your personal preference. There's audio guys out there there's still that really swear by analog only, although all of them eventually go to digital, in some format. But if you want to go the outboard gear route and use like an outboard EQ and compressor, that's totally fine. However, there is a trade-off in terms of the flexibility. So if you're going to be recording into your computer through an EQ and through a compressor, you just got to be sure you're getting the right settings going in, because you don't get to go back and change it. Whereas if you use a digital plugin, you can kind of go back and change it after the fact if you want.
Cool. And how can someone go about contacting you if they wanted to? Do you answer questions independently if they wanted to? If somebody had a question?
Sure. Yeah. I'll just throw out my Twitter handle. I'm not on Twitter very much, but if you do tweet me, I'll see it. I'm on Twitter as DM Willard. That's my first two initials, D. M as in Michael, Willard, at Twitter.
Okay. So, and you're not opposed to folks saying, "Hey, I got a question, Dave."
No, that'd be great.
Awesome. All right, Dave, I want to thank you for the great information on making the pro sound, whether it be a commercial, a film, or whatever it may be.
Cool. Thank you for having me.